Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ODPP Café. My name is Anita Onuko. We are live on Facebook and from the city of Mombasa. As always, we have this show every Friday from 8 a.m. to 9, live on Facebook at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. We are also on YouTube at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and on Twitter we are at ODPP_KE. We invite you to follow the conversation. We invite you to make comments, ask questions, seek clarifications, and let's engage on the topic for today. I want us to just take a look at the courts today, and as always, not exhaustive, just a few stories from the courts as they were this week. Just have a look. So the first case we have is on the FKF president. He was charged in a graft case. The court released the FKF president, Nicholas Mwendwa, on a 7 million bond with two sureties of similar amounts or cash bail of 4 million and two contact persons. So you have heard the story of Nick Mwendwa that was in the courts. Mwendwa was charged with fraudulent acquisition of public property and failure to comply with procurement laws. The court also denied him access to his office or FKF offices or even access to the workers. So this was quite sensational in this week that we saw a lot of stories going on about the state of the football in Kenya, amongst other stories. So he was also barred from addressing the media or attending any football-related activities. That must be quite a hard task for a man who was always in the football space. So the other case we have for you is a man gets 20 years for defiling his daughter. This was quite a sad case. A Siaya court sentenced 53-year-old Stephen Ariko to 20 years imprisonment for defiling his 12-year-old daughter and 1 year imprisonment for threatening to kill the girl if she reported the incident. The court heard that Ariko lured his two daughters, the victim and her 8-year-old sister, to his bedroom. He asked them to go sleep in his bed since the roof in the sitting room where the girls slept was leaking. The victim said she was woken up to some discomfort, and this was their father doing this to them. Quite a sad story there. So the sentences will run concurrently. The incident happened in 2020 in Nyangoma sublocation of Siaya County, and the matter was prosecuted by Laban Ngetich. A former Tetu legislator, Ndongo Getenji, was charged afresh in a case where he's accused of assaulting Kihingo security guard. The prosecution submitted that on February 5th, 2021, Getenji assaulted Godfrey Mutua, a guard, at Kihingo village in Kitusuru Westlands sub-county. So this case is back again, and this guy has been charged afresh. Getenji has also been charged with being in possession of an invalid firearm certificate on February 18, 2021 at Kihingo village. The charge was withdrawn after the former MP filed for a review to the DPP. The new charge sheet contains a charge of assault, causing actual bodily harm, and he denied the charges and was released on a cash bail of 100,000 Kenya shillings. So the next is a story from the ODPP, and it's the reason why we're in Mombasa. The ODPP is holding an editor sensitization workshop in Mombasa. The sensitization forum theme is the 21st century prosecution service. It's towards the 21st century prosecution service. It brings together editors from various media houses under the Editors Guild umbrella, and it's to sensitize them on the ODPP mandate and how they work literally. I mean, effective and efficiently discharge of their mandate. So this is still ongoing, and it's the reason we're in Mombasa, and a bit of what it gives us an introduction of what we are going to discuss today. So the DPP acknowledged and appreciated the critical role of the media plays in shaping public perception and understanding of the criminal justice system. So this story just leads us into today's discussion, and I want us to get right into it. But before we do that, I would want my panelists today, my guests, to introduce themselves and tell us what they do, and yes, then you can get into the discussion. Karibu sana Bwana Mule.
Thank you very much, Anita. I'm Victor Mule, Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. I'm in charge of all prosecution services throughout the country. Thank you.
You are the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yeah, I supervise all prosecutors, the 800 of them, what they do. If they are not in court, if they are not performing well, I'm the one responsible. And also supposed to ensure that each prosecutor is in court, and each judicial officer has got a prosecutor in their court on a daily basis.
Okay. Do you think we are heading towards a 21st century prosecution service?
We are there.
We are there, or
we are not yet there.
Yeah.
One or two things, but we are progressing on very well.
Yeah.
Despite the global challenges, including COVID, but we are doing well, and we are looking towards excellence.
Okay. We'll wait to hear more from you. Karibu sana, Dennis.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Yeah. Please introduce yourself. I know people know who you are, but for the sake of those who don't.
Well, we can never assume. Well, my name is Dennis Okari. I'm the Special Projects and Investigations Editor at NTV, Nation Media Group. I've done this for nearly 20 years. So my job is pretty much very simple. I'm paid to tell stories. Yeah. Yes.
And I'm glad you're here to tell us the story. So maybe just to kick us off, do you think the media actually has a role in enhancing the criminal justice system in Kenya?
I think we do, because it's part of the wheel that moves the vehicle when we talk about the criminal justice system, because we normally deal with the information, and we have the different mediums that we use to disseminate this information. We have radios, we have TVs, we have newspapers, and nowadays we have online platforms that we use, which are credible, authentic, what most people call mainstream. Yeah. Though we stand accused many times of other different things, but I think we're just part of the piece of the big puzzle, because the public interacts with us. The public watches us, listens to us, they read our stories. So we're right in the middle of this whole process. So I strongly believe, yes, we are part of it. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe I have a PR question. I'm a PR person.
No problem.
So do you think this workshop was important? Because you've had the naysayers saying you didn't need to be here to do this. So do you think it is important that you're here?
I think it's important for one simple reason. Our business and our core business is in telling stories. We are guided by principles, we are guided by ethics, we have our own rules, we have our own protocols. And more often than not, you realize that when you're dealing with stories, or when you're dealing in an area which requires expertise, there's reason to have an engagement to better understand how do you work from your end, and for you to also understand how do we work from our end, so that we avoid a clash. And most times we've had these collisions before, where sometimes there's this mistrust, and I honestly understand where they're coming from. The idea is compromise. And we normally engage with so many different stakeholders. We are talking about the coming elections. Yes. We'll also want to understand what, for example, IEBC is doing. It's worth noting that just sitting down and having a conversation to better understand the preparation, to understand your advancement, to understand what you're up to understand what are your plans, so that we're also able to know from the media standpoint, so this is how then we can engage better. To be quite honest, for me personally, because I'm caught up in this criminal justice system many times, is also to share my frustrations, to share where I think we need to collaborate, to also talk about rules of engagement. So just having that understanding, I think, is very critical and very important. It doesn't influence anything. I will still pursue my stories. I will still go out and report the way I'm needed to report. Like I said, we are guided by principles. We are guided by our own house rules and ethics and that sort of thing. So there's no room really to compromise just because we are sitting here today. If a story comes up and the story is true, we go right ahead and do the story. But now for this kind of workshop, I think ideally it's just to also understand what are your future prospects. We've been talking about crime. You guys understand better the crimes that and the cases that you've prosecuted successfully, those ones that are in court. That information is also very important to us. So to engage in this back and forth, the questions, the answers, I think is very, very important and very healthy.
Yeah. So Mr. Mule, just tell me, do you think, just about the workshop again, do you think the media will get to understand your mandate from this workshop? Or what is it that you expect out of this workshop?
From this workshop, we expect the media to understand the role and the mandate of the DPP And this is very crucial because the public, there is a perception on who plays what role in the criminal justice system. From the time a crime is reported, to whom is it reported, what action does that agency do? It is investigated. It could be a small crime or a big crime, a big complex and corruption case. Then it is a file is compiled. It is brought to the DPP. What does the DPP do? It goes to court. Who takes it to court? And what does the court do? We want to bring it out. Who plays what role at what stage in the whole criminal justice system? And we expect the public, the media from here now to inform the public, because the public has got a right to the correct information. So out of this workshop, we expect that the public will be well informed on what role the DPP plays, and that perception that any agency is intruding to the mandate of another agency within the criminal justice system will be cleared.
Yeah. You talk about policies and things that have changed and the mandate. So that brings to light the discussion, your pet subject, the decision to charge. And for the purpose of this show, maybe you just take us just a little TBT, a throwback as to how was it before these guidelines. And you hear a lot of noise saying we need to share this mandate, we need to go back to where we were. So what are the risks of going back where we were?
Let me start by stating that prior to the current constitution in 2010, prosecutions were done by the police. Police officers used to prosecute cases. So police officers used to investigate the case and take the case to a fellow police officer to prosecute. The likelihood of a conflict of interest was imminent. Why? Because this is a junior police officer going to his senior, and the senior would give whatever directions, and that is one. Then two, there was also this aspect of a police officer fixing maybe a suspect for maybe on integrity issues. Maybe they have talked their underground deals which they are doing with the complainant to fix somebody, to settle scores. And so there were issues like, and the most common phrase was wacha koti iamue. Wacha koti iamue. And I want you to imagine a situation whereby an innocent person is prosecuted. One, this person is arrested, he is detained in a police station, he is innocent, he is taken to court, taken through the criminal system, witnesses are called, and ultimately is acquitted. That would be very wrong. That is what used to happen. Wacha koti ya moyo.
Bado koti inaamua.
Okay, no. If a police officer, let me tell you what used to happen. A police officer would take, the investigator now, would take to a fellow police officer, and then you tell the prosecutor. Maybe they would differ. They say there is no evidence, but then because they are colleagues, they would say wacha koti ya moyo. And maybe the investigator is senior than the prosecutor. So the senior investigator can tell the junior police officer investigator, wacha koti ya moyo. Yeah, because he's senior, and these are discipline forces. So there is that respect amongst the different ranks. But now with the guidelines on the decision to charge, the standards are set. Any prosecutor, any part of the country will make the same decision on the same file. There is uniformity, there is predictability, and the investigator knows, if I take this file to the prosecutor, this I can predict this is the decision that will be made. It's uniform in any part of the country. That's what I would say.
So Dennis, 20 years in investigative journalism, right?
Well, not really. Just generally being a journalist.
Generally. But then within the investigative space, have you seen things different now that we are under the 2010 constitution, the new constitution, in the manner in which investigative agencies operate, and of course the prosecutors?
Unfortunately, the experience that we've had is it's good to make those strides to just change things, and to just simply have a way of, for example, accessing information or understanding how things work. But more often than not, this is on paper than it is in reality, because vitu kwa ground is different, So we're caught up in this rat race in the city, and we have deadlines to meet. We have targets to meet. So what you find happening is, on paper it looks good. You have access to this information and this and the other. But when you practically try to access it, it becomes next to impossible because, again, of this issue of mistrust. You don't trust me. You question why I want that information, for example. And so we've had this frosty relationship with a lot of investigating agencies. And simply because we don't have the rules of engagement. For example, if I'm pursuing a story and there's a case in court, to what extent can I then cover that story, for example? I will admit that we've had incidents where the journalists who go beyond what they're supposed to be doing and they mess up. Not to mean that you're perfect. We've made so many mistakes in the past.
Human, yeah.
So we're human. We're also learning from different experiences, depending on a case. It's case by case. So we also learn internally. We assess what we are doing. We also look at where we went wrong. We may not necessarily publicly admit that we are wrong, but internally we make those adjustments and we correct those mistakes. But under the current constitution, also in terms of media freedoms, we've had so many challenges. I've had myself and my colleagues threatened when it comes to working on stories, and sometimes these are very subtle threats, not just physical threats, but also someone threatening to take you to court, to send you lawyers and that kind of thing. There's a lot of intimidation. There's also a lot of intolerance that we've witnessed, and especially now that we are inching closer to the election, we are seeing a lot of intolerance. I'm sure you've watched the news and you've seen journalists being beaten by crowds or called out by politicians and that sort of thing. And so we're beginning to see this taking shape slowly. It's something that is troubling us, and we're so worried about what this then will mean if we get closer to the election, for example. So things have changed on paper, but we are yet to get there. I will say, the gains. We're yet to get there. It may take time, but I sure do hope that the next generation of journalists will enjoy the freedoms and the fighting that we currently have to be better. Because
they're definitely also just enjoying somebody else's.
Somebody paid the price for us to be where we are today.
So when you speak to prosecutors like Mule and even other agencies like ESCC and NCIC, there's this thing that, yes, the laws are there, but the onus is still on the citizen to do better. You understand? Like, we know the laws, it is written down that maybe it is not very clear about whether to elect somebody who, whether, let's say, an MP who's facing corruption charges should go back to the ballot. So they'll end up in the ballot because the laws are really not. But then the question is, what role is the media playing in such instances? What are you doing to tell the citizen to act better? Because Mule can't shout loud enough from where he's seated. You have the platform.
That's a trap question. This is what I'll say. You know, I've heard this phrase a lot of times. The law is very clear.
Mule said we shouldn't say that yesterday. Why?
So you have these lawyers saying the law is very clear. Then the other one saying the constitution is very clear. But the argument that comes out confuses people, confuses even journalists. So we are not lawyers. I'm just simply a journalist. I have to refer back to the constitution and to the law, and like I said, with what guides us in what we do in the newsroom. However, our job is to tell stories. We are basically, though this is another argument altogether, that we are a mirror of the events in the society. But we're also driven by commercial interests. Those are the realities that we face today.
And the unfortunate reality.
Unfortunate realities. And they exist. It's not unique to Kenya. It's a global issue because media is a business. However, when it comes now to the question that you've asked about, this politician as a corruption case in court, for example, the institutions will do their job. Our job is to tell the story. But you do realize we can't advocate for this person, and we can't say, oh, this person is not the right person to elect because he has a case and this and the other.
You can't do that.
We can't do that, because then we are stepping into a very, very uncharted waters, and we might get into trouble. Currently, the journalists or even media organizations that are in trouble for perception, shaping the perception that this is a preferred candidate and this one is not a preferred candidate, for example. So you realize we'll get into trouble if we do that. But our job is to say, for example, he's a thief. This is the evidence. He stole this and this and this. This is what
So
the
I
court
make
is
the
saying
decision.
it's your job to make that decision. I can't make that decision for you.
What do you think, Mule? Do you think the media should do more?
Yeah, I think the media should do more
Yeah.
and tell the public what exactly is happening, report objectively, report the right thing, and where there is need for clarification, it's
Yeah.
not clear, seek clarification for us.
Yeah.
Because some reporting can bring disrepute to an office.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we are accountable as public officers, we are accountable to the public.
Yeah.
And we have to serve the public with the dignity and exude integrity. Yeah.
Okay, so then Mule, to what extent do you sometimes depend on the media for witnesses, for evidence? Do you ever work with media for evidence? Like if Dennis records a hate speech, whatever, someone in a public meeting, how do you work with this?
We seek, what we do is that we seek from the media house that they give us the information so that now it can be converted into evidence by the investigating agency. This is because some of the media houses, unless they are the complainant, are not ready to release their officers to testify and produce like TV clips. But some are able, we have had instances where they allow us, like I would give an example of the 2007 shooting in Kisumu, in Kodele, by an officer called Edward Kirui. KTN aired the clip and they agreed to come and testify in court, and they testified. And we got a conviction, and we are very grateful. But other media houses, sometimes they are reluctant for reasons. But the best practice would be if the media house for it to come, because in court in Kenya, it is the first evidence. The person who saw it, so that it is not hearsay. It is not a rumor. I'm the one who did it. I can vouch for the integrity. You know, like if it is a video, it's important that the person who took it says, yes, this is what I took. It is in the same form it was when I took it, so that the integrity issues are not raised. But where the media house is not ready to release their officers or the journalists to come, we send it over to an investigator who now converts it into evidence which is admissible in court.
Yeah, what do you do when their lives are in danger? As witnesses, what do you do?
We have the Witness Protection Agency. If a witness fears for their life, they are intimidated. They feel that by testifying in court, they are likely to be injured or harmed for whatever reason. We use the Witness Protection Agency. And in Kenya, the Witness Protection Agency and programs are very strong and quite well supported. Yeah, and well supported by the government.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a very strong witness program in Kenya.
Oh, all right. Okay, Dennis, I know you've talked about commercialization, but where do you draw the line between being sensational and being factual? And I know sometimes when public officers like Mule, they expect you to be factual, because I think that is what they want to see. But where do you draw the line between being sensational and being factual? Because it's a very thin line.
Like I earlier said, all these media organizations, they're businesses.
Yes.
They run for profit. However, there's an element to how the organization runs. I can't speak for everyone, but what I know in my experience and where I currently work is we have to be objective. Personally, when I'm working on stories, I really have to be objective. It's not all the time that you'll get it 100%. There are moments when you'll just slip up a bit, but then we correct internally. We correct those kind of mistakes. We're evolving. We're also changing in terms of how we cover our stories. So to avoid being sensational is just like you said. It's just outrightly being objective, having the evidence, sticking to the facts. In my line of work, for example, it's extremely challenging because when we're working on investigative stories, we always are taken to court. And the whole contention is, do you have evidence that this person actually stole this money or did this and the other? And the answer is yes, and this is the evidence that we have. The other arguments can take shape in court. That's where now my job ends at the point when I've done the story, it's already gone on air. Lawyers will do their job. There will be arguments, and everyone picks it up. But there's a point to have this objectivity really analyzed, and for people to go through the different processes of what then makes a story, a sensational story, what makes a story an objective story. So I think there are internal processes and interrogations, and each media organization does what they do. For us, it's very, very important to always stick to what, the when, the why, the how, and that sort of thing. Those are the fundamentals that generally guide any story that goes to print, goes online, or goes on TV or on radio. Yes.
Yeah, good, good. I think we operate under the same principles. Like communications, you have to answer to the 5 W's and the H, and get it done. So Mule, we talk about the decision to charge, but we rarely talk about the decision not to charge. So my question actually is, do you have to disclose this information? Like, is it public information when you decide not to charge or charge, whatever?
Thank you, Anita. The public, I always say, has got the right to information. And when we decide not to charge, not to prosecute, we normally write to the investigating officer, or to the investigating agency, giving them the reasons. Under the Constitution, there is fair administration, the right to fair administrative action. And the right to fair administration action means that you give reasons why you have made this decision. So what we do is we get a file from an investigating agency, they make recommendations, charge. But when the file comes to us, we analyze the evidence and we say there is no sufficient evidence to charge. So we have to communicate. So we have to give reasons. So we give reasons. Sometimes we are requested to review the decision to charge. So we might review the decision and say we had made the decision to charge. Now we are reversing or reviewing this decision. Again, the person who has requested, we have to give reasons. Because you cannot just write one sentence and say we are not charging. We have reviewed our decision to charge.
But that's a story that goes out. Anita freed.
Now that is a challenge. One of the challenges.
Yes.
Misreporting, failure to report, because all letters I write, I give reasons personally. And as I said, I am in charge of all prosecutors. I tell them, any decision you make, let it not be oral, let it be in writing. Even the DPP himself insists always, put everything in writing and give reasons. Even if you are not going to write a letter, there is a file, the police file, the inquiry file. Write on the inquiry file, I'm not going to charge in this case because of this. Maybe you don't have time. The prosecutor is in court, he doesn't have time to write a long letter and give reasons. Right there, these are the reasons. And you can follow it up with a letter. So we do write, we do give reasons, because the investigating agency, the victim, the complainant, and the public have got a right to information and fair administrative action.
When you talk
and
about
we do
it sounds so easy. And so
I do it. I do it.
Yes.
I personally do it, and I will give.
And this is, I think, where sometimes we clash, because access to that information and the full disclosure of it sometimes doesn't come in a very straight way. You really have to push. You really have to ask. And where I think for us then we come in is the public expects us to, like you said, freed at last, or whatever it is. The misreporting that sometimes we're accused of is because we don't get the full disclosure or the access to that information. And when we don't get that information, then we don't have an explanation to why that information is not coming forth. So I think it's an area that is still
work in progress.
Yes.
Well, let me say this, Alicia. We receive complaints on a daily basis from complainants. Why didn't you charge? And when we receive that complaint, two things do happen. It comes to me, and I'm supposed to call the police file from whatever police station in the whole country. It comes to me, and I do a detailed letter. The other thing, if the complaint against a prosecutor, it is received by the in charge of the Department of Quality Assurance. There is a deputy director of public in charge of quality assurance. It goes to them as a complaint against a prosecutor, and the deputy director calls for the file and gives reason to that person. This is why we charge. And sometimes we can even change the decision which was made at the station level.
Okay. All right. Because I promised half an hour. We have to stop and maybe continue later. But clearly it is critical for the media to work with agencies like ODPP to get information out, right? And to also know how to report and when to report what.
I mean, the reality is, if we interview lawyers, we interview victims, it's only fair enough to also have an understanding on there's a role each agency plays. My job is to put and pin a story together.
Yes.
So any missing puzzle, any missing piece in the puzzle will generally affect the output of the content that we either air, print,
Yeah.
and whatever it is that we do. But I think having an understanding of what we do, for you to understand this is where we're coming from. It's nothing personal. I'm not fighting you. It's
Yeah.
a story I'm doing and just simply doing my job.
Yeah.
I'm in between the public and you. So for me to access this information, then I need you to then explain to me why I can't get that information, or this is the information. And then now for me to sit down and synthesize that information for public consumption.
Yeah.
So I think there's a need to ensure that all these agencies, because of all this mistrust and all the issues that we've had in the past, having this sort of engagement helps so that we are able to tell our stories better. Doesn't necessarily mean that because I'm here, I can't call him out
Yeah.
when I think maybe he is wrong.
Yeah, and he can call you out.
And he can call me out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So I think, Mule, like what you're saying is that there's need for collaboration. I also learned the other day that this whole collaboration, this engagements, they really demarcate roles. You get to understand. Like, I know now they know. Today there's a story that says DPP does what?
We'll do away with the police charges.
Yeah, there's something. There's a
Yeah.
very sensational headline done today from this forum.
Yeah.
But now you see what Clay explained yesterday, that it is their work to make it catchy. But then now when you go into the details, then there's really nothing alarming, so to say, about the story. It's only the headline. So I think it's best you understand how you work and how to complement each other. And of course, also that collaboration is not about being colluding, against the public, me now. It's about now knowing how best to serve me. Those are just lessons I've learned in the course of this cafe. And of course, the power of communication. I'm not a lawyer myself, so communication has really played a big role even in me understanding what Mule does when he says he calls prosecutors to action.
True.
Yeah. So we normally have comments on social, questions and stuff, but because of time and because we're about to start this, I need to stop this.
Okay.
We'll definitely go back and respond to them offline.
Well,
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anita.
A
It's
brief
pleasure.
discussion,
Yeah.
because we normally do 1 hour or more, but at least
It's Mombasa.
it's
So
Mombasa.
acha tutulie.
Acha tutulie. Si ndio?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We've come to an end of this session, as brief as it was, but quite informative. I'm always for the power of communication, and this is what you're doing here. We need to communicate. The agencies need to communicate to understand how to best serve you and I, the citizens. So I want to wish you a good Friday and, of course, a good weekend ahead. Let's meet again next week to see what we shall be discussing. God bless.